I never thought of myself as the jealous type. I never snooped through my wife's things, never checked her phone, never second-guessed the nights she came home late from work, claiming she had a meeting that ran over or a last-minute project to wrap up. I believed in trust. I believed in respect. I believed in the foundation we had built over the years, the silent agreement that we were on the same team, that we had each other's backs. Until that night. It started like any other evening. She was in the kitchen, scrolling through her tablet, looking up some new recipe she wanted to try. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air as she absent-mindedly hummed to herself, flipping through ingredients. I was in the living room, half watching the news, half scrolling through my own phone, lost in the mindless routine of a regular weekday. And then her phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Why wouldn't I? People text all the time. Work stuff, friends, social media notifications, nothing out of the ordinary. But then it buzzed again, and again, and again. A rapid-fire string of messages, one after the other, like someone desperate for a response. That was unusual. I glanced at the screen, more out of curiosity than suspicion. The name that popped up was Jason. Jason. The name rang a bell, but not in a way that made me feel anything at first. I had heard it before, plenty of times. A co-worker. Someone she had casually mentioned in passing. Jason got a promotion. Jason brought donuts to the office. Jason told a dumb joke at lunch. But what froze me in place wasn't the name. It was the text preview flashing on the screen. I can't stop thinking about last night. A cold sensation spread through my chest, starting in my ribs and curling outward like frost on a window pane. I stared at the message, my brain trying to keep up, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. My fingers twitched. Before I could think better of it, before I could talk myself out of it, my hand moved on its own. I picked up her phone. The screen was still unlocked. She had never changed her passcode. Maybe because she never expected to get caught. I swiped the message open, and that's when the ground beneath me disappeared. There were dozens of messages. A long, filthy, explicit conversation stretching back weeks, maybe even months. My eyes darted from one text to another, barely able to process what I was reading. Last night was incredible. I swear, I almost lost it when I didn't finish reading that one. My vision blurred with red-hot rage. Wish I could have stayed longer. You drive me crazy, you know that. He has no idea, does he? My breathing became shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. I kept scrolling, feeling the nausea rise in my throat. Hotel reservations. Plans to meet after work. Inside jokes that didn't belong to me. Things she used to say to me. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. Some rational, logical reason for what I was seeing. A mistake. A misunderstanding. But there was no mistaking the picture she had sent. The words she had typed. The proof was right there. My wife was having an affair. And she hadn't even bothered to hide it. Something inside me snapped. My fingers clenched around the phone so tightly that for a second, I thought I might crush it. My jaw ached from how hard I was grinding my teeth. I wasn't sad. I wasn't heartbroken. I was furious. The kind of fury that makes your blood boil, that turns your muscles rigid, that blinds you to anything else except the need to do something. Anything. From the kitchen, she was still humming to herself, oblivious. The soft sound of normalcy, of a life I thought was real. Then, like an idiot, she called over her shoulder, "Hey, babe, you want chicken or steak for dinner?" Steak? Dinner? Like nothing had changed? Like she wasn't just texting another man, making plans to see him again while I was sitting right here in the next room? My whole body tensed, the phone burning in my grip. My feet moved before my mind caught up. I stood so fast the couch creaked under the shift. My breath was coming in sharp bursts, the fury throbbing in my temples, in my chest, in my fists. She must have heard me move because she turned, a curious smile on her lips, until she saw what was in my hand. Her phone. Her face drained of color. For a second, just a fraction of a second, her expression was unreadable. Like her brain hadn't caught up yet. Like she hadn't fully processed what was happening. But then I saw it. The flicker of realization, the widening of her eyes, the way her lips parted just slightly, as if she were about to say something but didn't know what. She knew. She knew exactly what I had seen. And still, She had the audacity to try and play dumb. "Hey," she said, her voice light, careful. "What's wrong?" "Wrong? Wrong?" My grip tightened around the phone, and I took a slow step forward, closing the space between us. I could hear my own breathing, shallow, harsh, edged with something dangerous. She had no idea what was coming. I held up the screen, shoving it toward her. "What the hell is this?" A beat of silence, just a second too long. A hesitation, and that was all I needed to confirm it. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. Then, like it was rehearsed, her expression shifted into something softer, something innocent. She let out a nervous chuckle, shaking her head. "Oh my God, babe. Are you seriously going through my messages?" She forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's kind of messed up." That's the angle she was taking? Deflection? I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You're really going to sit there and act like I'm the problem?" She crossed her arms, shifting her weight to one side. "I just think it's a little weird that you're checking my phone." I could feel my pulse pounding in my skull. The absolute nerve of this woman. "You're cheating on me," I said, my voice low, seething. "Don't you dare act like I'm the one in the wrong." Another hesitation. A flicker of panic. Then, just like that, she switched tactics. "Wait, no. Hold on, you don't understand." She shook her head quickly, stepping toward me, reaching out as if she thought she could fix this. "It's not what you think. Not what I think." I held up the phone again, scrolling through the filth she had sent Jason. The plans. The pictures. The words it should have only ever been for me. I turned the screen toward her. "You want to tell me what this is, then?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She had nothing. Nothing. I stepped back, shaking my head. "Jesus Christ." She exhaled sharply, running a hand through her hair, pacing slightly. Okay, look," she started, her voice suddenly lower, like she was trying to keep things calm, keep me calm. "I admit, maybe I got carried away, but it's not what you're making it out to be. Not what I'm making it out to be." My voice was dangerous now. Even I could hear it. "You've been screwing your coworker behind my back, and I'm the one making it into something?" She took another step toward me, her hands up like I was some wild animal she had to soothe. "I was lonely, okay? You've been so distant lately, and I laughed. I actually laughed. Are you seriously blaming me for this?" I gestured wildly, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it might burst. "You're sleeping with another man, and your excuse is that I wasn't giving you enough attention?" She winced like the words stung. "Good. It just happened, okay?" She rushed out. "It wasn't planned, I swear. It was just a mistake. A mistake. A mistake." Like she tripped and fell onto him. Like she didn't actively make the choice to betray me over and over and over again. I could feel the rage boiling inside me, but it was no longer a blind, chaotic fury. It was cold now. Sharp. Controlled. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was scrambling, grasping for any excuse, any angle she could spin to save herself. I stared at her, at the woman I thought I knew, and I saw it all clearly now. The way she shifted the blame, the way she played innocent, the way she expected me to believe her. She thought she could talk her way out of this. She thought she still had power here. She was wrong, and she was about to find out just how wrong she was. She was still standing there, waiting, watching, calculating. The gears in her head were spinning so fast, I could almost hear them grinding together. She thought if she said the right thing, played the right card, she could still talk her way out of this. I could see it in the way her lips parted slightly, in the way her chest rose and fell as she controlled her breathing. She was already preparing her next excuse, her next lie, but she had already lost, and she didn't even know it yet. I took a step back, still gripping her phone like it was evidence in a courtroom. I couldn't take my eyes off her. This stranger standing in my house, in my kitchen, acting like she hadn't just set fire to our entire marriage. I saw her differently now, like some twisted mask had finally slipped off, revealing the woman she really was underneath. She wasn't the loving wife who kissed me goodbye in the mornings. She wasn't the person who asked me about my day, who sat next to me on the couch, who laughed at my dumb jokes. That woman didn't exist. This woman? This liar in front of me? She was something else entirely. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. "Okay, Listen, she said, lowering her voice like she was trying to sound reasonable. I know this looks bad, but it's not. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so goddamn pathetic. You know this looks bad? I repeated, my voice sharp enough to cut. You think this is about how it looks? I stepped forward, pressing the phone against her chest. This is about what you did. Her breath hitched. I could see the panic setting in, the way her fingers twitched at her sides. She wasn't used to me being like this. She wasn't used to me not playing along, and I could tell she didn't know what to do with that. She reached for my arm, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I made a mistake, okay? I jerked away from her touch, my entire body recoiling. Stop calling it that. Her brows pulled together. But it was a mistake. I cut her off, voice dripping with venom. Right? That's what you keep saying. I turned, pacing, running a hand over my jaw, try to contain the rage clawing at my ribs. You didn't accidentally send him those messages. I continued, my voice cold. You didn't accidentally meet him in a hotel room. You didn't accidentally lie to my face, over and over and over again. I spun back to face her, my chest tight, my hands clenched. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had nothing, because there was nothing she could say. I could see it now, the cracks forming in her defense. Her whole plan, her whole pathetic excuse of a cover story, was falling apart, and she could feel it. Okay, she said quickly, her tone shifting again, now desperate. Okay, fine, I screwed up. I messed up. I'm sorry. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. She still didn't get it. You're not sorry, I said. You're just sorry you got caught. Her mouth opened again, but this time I didn't let her speak. How long? I demanded. She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. I narrowed my eyes. How long had you been screwing him? She crossed her arms, glancing to the side, suddenly unable to look at me. God damn it, just answer me. My voice came out louder than I expected, making her flinch. 6 months, she whispered. A sharp, bitter laugh ripped out of my throat. 6 months. 6 goddamn months. While I sat across from her at dinner. While I held her in my arms at night. While I planned our future, our home, our life together. And, the whole time, she was sneaking around behind my back like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. You disgust me, I muttered, shaking my head. Her face twisted, her eyes suddenly shining. The waterworks were coming. Babe, please, she choked out, stepping toward me again, but I backed away. I wasn't playing this game. Save it, I snapped. Don't you dare start crying like you're the victim here. Her expression flickered again, and just like that, the mask slipped for real. The softness, the fake regret, the shaky voice, it all vanished in an instant. And in its place, I saw the real her. Her face hardened. Her jaw tightened. Fine, she snapped, crossing her arms over her chest. You want the truth? You've been boring. Predictable. Half the time, it's like you don't even see me anymore. I blinked. Of course. Of course she would turn it back on me. Wow. I muttered, letting out a humorless laugh. There it is. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable, but she didn't say anything. You couldn't even own up to it, I said, shaking my head. You couldn't even admit what you did without trying to make it my fault. She shifted on her feet, crossing her arms tighter, like she was trying to hold herself together. I didn't plan for this to happen, she muttered. It just... Stop. I cut her off, holding up a hand. Just stop, because I was done. I was so done. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair, grounding myself. My pulse was still hammering, my muscles still tight with rage, but the clarity was setting in now. I wasn't sad. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't going to waste another second on her excuses, her lies, her pathetic attempts to justify this. I met her eyes one last time, my voice steady, final. You're not my problem anymore. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked away. She called my name, but I didn't stop. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't care anymore. I didn't hear her footsteps right away, but I knew she was following me. I could feel it. That presence, that pathetic desperation radiating off her. She wasn't done. Not yet. She never expected to get caught. That much was clear. But now that she had, she was scrambling. And even though I was done with her excuses, done with her lies, she wasn't done spinning them. I reached the bedroom, my mind buzzing, my hands still trembling with the weight of pure fury. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to punch something, to break something, to destroy something the way she had destroyed us. But I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I wouldn't let her turn me into the bad guy. I grabbed my duffel bag from the closet, throwing it onto the bed with a force that made the mattress shake. I was already shoving clothes inside when I heard her voice behind me. "You're leaving?" The way she said it, breathy, incredulous, like she still had a sliver of hope that this could all be undone. I didn't even look at her. What the hell does it look like? A sharp intake of breath. "Babe." I whirled around so fast, she actually took a step back. "Don't you dare call me that." My voice was lower now, steady, dangerous. "You lost that right the second you spread your legs for him." Her face twisted like I had slapped her. "Jesus," she whispered, shaking her head. "Do you have any idea how cruel you're being right now?" Cruel. I actually laughed at that. A cold, bitter sound that felt like nails against my teeth. She thought I was being cruel? I took a slow step forward, watching her tense up, watching the fear creep in her eyes. "You think this is cruel?" I asked, my voice sharp enough to cut. "Cruel is lying to my face every single day. Cruel is sneaking around behind my back for 6 months while I was busting my ass to build a life for us. Cruel is pretending you love me while you were screwing some piece of shit from your office." She flinched. Good. I could see her unraveling now, the cracks in her act getting wider and wider. "Babe, She stopped herself, shaking her head. "I mean, listen, it didn't mean anything, okay?" That did it. I let out a slow breath, gripping the edge of the dresser, so hard my knuckles ached. "Wow," I muttered. "It didn't mean anything. That's not what I turned to face her fully, eyes burning. "So, let me get this straight. You risked our marriage, our home, our entire goddamn life together, for something that didn't mean anything." She blinked rapidly, her mouth opening and closing, but she had no answer, because she knew how pathetic she sounded. "You don't get to stand here and tell me it didn't mean anything," I spat. "You don't get to pretend this was just some stupid mistake, some oops moment. You made a choice. Every single time you texted him, every time you snuck around, every time you climbed into his bed, you chose this." She looked away, biting her lip. She had nothing left. I turned back to my duffel bag, yanking the zipper open wider. "I'm done," I muttered, stuffing more clothes inside. I could feel her panic growing behind me, like a trapped animal searching for an escape. Wait, wait, wait," she rushed out, stepping closer, her voice higher now, urgent. "You're really leaving? Just like that? Just like that?" I repeated, shaking my head with a sharp laugh. "You think this is sudden?" She swallowed hard. "This isn't sudden," I continued, my tone turning ice cold. "This has been happening for 6 months. I just didn't know." She was breathing fast now, her hands twisting together in front of her like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. Okay, she started, licking her lips. Maybe we can talk about this, okay?" I zipped up the bag in one harsh motion. "There's nothing to talk about." She let out a short, desperate laugh. "Come on, we've been together for, 6 years? You're really going to throw all that away over one mistake?" I froze. Slowly, deliberately, I turned to look at her. "You still don't get it, do you?" I said quietly. She shifted on her feet, eyes darting around, searching for something, anything to hold on to. "You already threw it away," I continued, my voice sharp as a blade. "You did that the moment you decided I wasn't enough." Silence. For the first time, I saw it. Realization. Not guilt. Not regret. Just acceptance. She knew she had lost. I grabbed my bag, slinging it over my shoulder, and without another word, I walked toward the door. "Wait," she choked out. Where are you going?" I didn't stop. Didn't turn. Anywhere but here. I reached the front door, my hand gripping the knob, ready to walk out of this lie of a life. But then, right before I stepped outside, she played her last card. "Wait," she cried, her voice breaking. I hesitated. Not because I cared. Not because I was second-guessing myself. But because there was something different in her voice now. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't regret. It was fear. Real, genuine fear. I turned my head just slightly, just enough to see her standing there in the hallway, her face pale, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. And then, barely above a whisper, she said it. "You don't understand. I think I might be pregnant." I stood there, frozen, my fingers still wrapped around the doorknob. The words hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I think I might be pregnant. At first, I thought I had misheard her. That maybe my brain, still boiling over with anger, had twisted her words into something far worse than what she had actually said. But no, she had said it. And from the way she was looking at me, eyes wide, lips trembling, arms wrapped around herself like a frightened child, I knew she had meant it exactly the way it sounded. I turned slowly, facing her fully, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, my nails digging into my palms so hard I wouldn't be surprised if I was drawing blood. "Say that again," I muttered. She licked her lips, her breathing shaky. She hesitated, her voice trembling. "I think I might be pregnant." I stared at her, trying to process what the hell was happening, trying to understand if she had actually just said that, or if I was in some kind of fever dream, trapped in a reality so twisted I didn't recognize it anymore. She wasn't serious. She couldn't be serious. But the way she looked at me, the way she shifted her weight from foot to foot, the way her arms clutched at her stomach like she was already cradling something, made me realize that she was, in fact, dead serious. And then it hit me. This wasn't a confession. This wasn't her trying to tell me something out of honesty, out of guilt, out of whatever small scrap of humanity she had left. This was a tactic, a last-ditch effort to keep me from walking out that door. I let out a slow, shaky breath, running a hand down my face. Jesus Christ. Her eyes flickered with something. Relief? Hope. She took a step forward, reaching for me like she thought she could still fix this. "I know this is a shock," she said softly, but I snapped my gaze up to hers, cutting her off. "Is it mine?" Her mouth clamped shut. Her breath caught. Her eyes went wide. And in that single moment, I knew. I fucking knew. Because if she hadn't hesitated, if she hadn't frozen like a deer caught in headlights, she would have immediately said yes. She would have been offended that I even asked. She would have been angry that I could doubt her like that. But she wasn't. She was just silent. And that silence? That silence told me everything I needed to know. I let out a dry, humorless chuckle, shaking my head. Holy shit. She blinked rapidly, shaking her head. "Wait, no. How long have you known?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. She faltered, shifting on her feet. I just started suspecting like a week ago, but I haven't taken a test yet. A week ago. A week. I clenched my jaw, breathing deeply through my nose, failing to keep my temper in check. "So, let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You've been screwing your coworker for 6 months. You've been lying to me, deceiving me, humiliating me. And now, suddenly, just as I'm about to walk out that door, you decide to drop this bombshell." She swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to. "To what?" I snapped, taking a step toward her. "To keep me here? To make me stay? To trap me?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She shook her head frantically. "No, that's not what this is, I swear." I exhaled sharply, clenching my fists at my sides. "Do you even know if it's mine?" I asked coldly. She flinched at the question, her eyes darting away. That was all the answer I needed. I laughed. Actually laughed. But it wasn't out of humor. It was out of pure, exhausted disbelief. "Unbelievable," I muttered, raking a hand through my hair. "You don't even know, do you?" She bit her lip hard. Her breathing was shallow, her whole body trembling now. I cut her off with a sharp shake of my head. "Don't. Just don't." A thick silence settled between us. I could see it now, the realization dawning in her eyes. She had lost. She had played her last card, pulled her most desperate move, and it had failed. And now, she was standing in front of me with nothing left but the wreckage of her own making. I turned back toward the door, my mind numb, my body tense with rage. "You want a paternity test?" she blurted suddenly. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. "I'll take one," she continued quickly, her voice shaking. Right now. Today. Whatever you need. I squeezed my eyes shut. Jesus Christ. She wasn't letting this go. I exhaled through gritted teeth. If it's mine, I muttered, barely able to force the words out. We'll figure it out. Hope flickered in her eyes. So you'll stay? I turned my head, meeting her gaze with a look so sharp it could have cut through steel. No. The hope shattered. Her breath hitched, her face crumpling. I will never stay with you, I said firmly. I will never forgive you. I will never trust you again. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Please, she choked out. Don't do this. I let out a slow breath, gripping the doorknob so tightly my knuckles ached. I didn't do this, I said quietly. You did. And with that, I opened the door, stepping out into the night. She called my name one last time, her voice breaking. But I didn't look back. I didn't stop, because I knew, without a doubt, that this was the end. The night air hit me like a slap to the face. Cold, sharp, bracing. A stark contrast to the suffocating heat of the house, where the walls had felt like they were closing in on me, trapping me in her lies. Now, out here I could breathe, but breathing didn't mean I wasn't furious. I clenched my fists as I walked to my car, the duffel bag heavy on my shoulder, my mind an absolute war zone. She thinks she might be pregnant. The words repeated in my head over and over like a goddamn curse. Was it mine? Was it his? Did it even matter at this point? The moment she said it, I knew. She was trying to trap me. She hadn't told me earlier because she wasn't sure yet. She hadn't told me because it didn't serve her until right now. It was a tool, a weapon, a last-ditch attempt to keep me under her thumb. And for a second, for just a brief, flickering moment, I had hesitated. Because if it was mine, then what? I reached my car, yanking open the door and throwing my bag inside. My hands gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled, my breath coming out in short, ragged bursts. I had no plan, no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. Not with her. Not another second. But even as I sat in the car, my mind racing, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The days that followed were a blur. I stayed in a hotel at first, just to get my head straight. Then I found a short-term rental, some small, barely furnished apartment that I didn't give a damn about. It wasn't home, but home didn't exist anymore. I hadn't spoken to her since the night I left. She had called, texted, emailed, at first constantly, then sporadically, then not at all. I didn't answer. I didn't give her the satisfaction. But that didn't mean she was done. Because 3 days after I walked out, I got an email. Subject: I took the test. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, my gut twisting into knots. It was short. I took the test. I'm pregnant. I don't know if it's yours. I'll take a paternity test when I can. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, I messed up. Just that. I laughed under my breath, but there was nothing funny about it. This was my life now. My wife, if I could even call her that anymore, was pregnant, and I had no idea if I was about to be the father of a child conceived in betrayal. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to her. Even if the baby was mine, that didn't change what she had done. It didn't erase the 6 months of lies, the months of sneaking around, the way she had gaslit me, manipulated me, humiliated me. She wanted to trap me, but she had underestimated just how far I was willing to go to get away from her. She had the paternity test done as soon as it was possible. She texted me the results. I could have ignored it, let my lawyer handle it, kept my distance, but I needed to see it for myself. I tapped on the message, pulling up the attached document. My pulse pounded in my ears. And then I saw it. 0% probability of paternity. Not mine. I stared at the screen for a long time, my mind blank. And then I laughed. Loud, deep, genuine laughter for the first time in weeks. She had played her last card, and she had lost. The divorce papers were served. She tried to call me, of course. Left voicemails crying, pleading, begging me to talk to her. I never did. She wasn't my problem anymore. She never would be again. I don't know how long I stared at the paternity test results. Maybe a minute. Maybe an hour. The numbers were clear. 0% probability of paternity. Not mine. Not even a chance. It was almost funny. Almost. I let out a slow breath, setting my phone down on the cheap, scratched-up table in my temporary apartment. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, just a mattress on the floor and a couch I barely used. This wasn't a home. It was just a place to exist until I figured out what came next. But for the first time since that night, the night I walked out, the night she tried to trap me with the one thing that could have kept me tethered to her, I felt something close to peace. She was out of my life. For good. And yet, it didn't feel like the end. Not yet. The final step was the divorce papers. I had been waiting for this moment since the second I walked out that door. I had expected her to fight me on it, expected her to make things messy. But when my lawyer finally called and said she signed the papers, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. I thought I'd be angry. I thought I'd feel vindicated. But all I felt was relief. Like a weight had finally been lifted. Like I was finally free. But of course, she couldn't let it end like that. She asked to see me. At first, I ignored the request. I had nothing left to say to her. Nothing left to give. But my lawyer advised me to get a final in-person confirmation that everything was settled, to eliminate any possibility of her trying to drag this out. So against every instinct in my body, I agreed. We met in a neutral location, a quiet, nondescript cafe, far from where we used to live. I arrived early, wanting to control the setting, to keep my back against the wall, to have a clear view of the exit. I wasn't going to sit across from her and pretend we were equals. Because we weren't. Not anymore. When she walked in, she looked different. Not worse. Not better. Just different. Tired. Like she hadn't been sleeping. Like she had aged 5 years in the past month. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun. Her clothes were neat but plain, her face bare of makeup. She slid into the seat across from me, her eyes scanning my face, searching for something. I gave her nothing. Silence stretched between us for a long moment before she finally spoke. "You look good," she said hesitantly. I didn't respond, didn't thank her, didn't return the compliment. Just waited. She shifted uncomfortably, folding her hands together. I wanted to talk. I exhaled through my nose. "We don't have anything to talk about." Her eyes flinched slightly, like she had been hoping for something else. She hesitated, looking down at her hands before meeting my gaze again. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. "Don't." Her brows furrowed. "Don't what?" "Don't apologize." My voice was steady, calm, cold. "Not because I don't deserve an apology, but because you don't mean it." She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but I wasn't done. "You're sorry you got caught," I continued. "You're sorry it ended like this. You're sorry I didn't let you manipulate me into staying. But you're not sorry for what you did." Her eyes were glistening now, but I felt nothing. "I don't know what you want me to say," she whispered. "Nothing," I said, "because there's nothing you can say that will change anything." Silence. She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "I miss you," she murmured. I stared at her, at the woman who had been my wife, the woman who had laughed with me, who had shared my bed, who had vowed to love me until death. And all I could think was, I don't even know who you are. "You don't miss me," I said, voice flat. "You miss what I gave you. Stability. Security. A safety net for when your fun was over." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "You were never going to leave him, were you?" I asked suddenly. She blinked, caught off guard. "What?" I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "If I hadn't caught you, if I hadn't read those texts, you weren't going to leave him. You weren't going to stop." Her breath hitched. "You were going to keep lying," I continued, watching the truth unfold on her face. "You were going to keep screwing him behind my back. And if the baby had been his, you would have found a way to make me think it was mine." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Please stop." I tilted my head. "Why?" "Because you don't like hearing the truth." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, sniffling. "I made a mistake." I exhaled sharply, sitting back. "You really need to find a new word for what you did." Silence stretched between us again. And then, she said something I hadn't expected. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I studied her, the desperation in her eyes, the way she looked at me like she wanted me to save her from herself. And then I shook my head. "No." Her face crumpled. I don't want things to end like this." I huffed a short laugh. The end of the moment I read that first text. She reached across the table, her fingertips brushing against the back of my hand, but I pulled away like her touch burned me. "This is the last time we're ever going to see each other," I said. She sniffled. "You don't know that." I met her gaze, my voice like ice. "I do." Her face twisted, but I didn't care. I stood up, grabbing my coat. "You know," I said, looking down at her one last time, "I used to think we were meant for each other." She inhaled sharply, like my words hurt worse than anything else I'd said. "But I was wrong," I continued. "I was just convenient for you. Until I wasn't." Her lips parted, another tear slipping down her cheek, but I was already walking away. She didn't call after me. She didn't follow. She just let me go. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt truly free.